Due to the success of my recent video, What Your Favorite Classic Novel Says About You, I've decided to turn this into a series, and I turned to my patrons to vote on what I should tackle next, and the winner was horror, which I'm very happy about. If you want to vote on what kinds of videos I make in the future, you can support me at patreon.com/WillowTalksBooks. And now let's find out what your favorite horror novel says about you. If your favorite horror novel is Pet Sematary by Stephen King, you're a no-holds-barred kind of horror fan. You like your horror fiction to be as dark, bleak, upsetting, terrifying, and unsettling as possible. No hope, no joy, nothing. You're also the kind of person whose friends check in on them quite often, just to make sure you're doing okay. However, if your favorite horror novel is It by Stephen King, you tell people it's because of the length. The fact that you have so much time to get to know these characters and watch them develop and grow and fight their fears. And speaking of the fear, Pennywise is such an enigmatic and curious, almost addictive and enthralling kind of villain. That's what you tell people, but babe, we all know how the novel ends. I'm sorry, I've got to call the cops. If your favourite horror novel is anything by Joe Hill, Nosferatu, Horns, Heart-Shaped Box, your favourite horror author is Stephen King, but you can't tell people that. You desperately want to think outside the box, and you can't think of anybody else, so you pick his son. If your favourite horror novel is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, you've got daddy issues. And you're also probably queer, you're probably neurodiverse, you feel a bit like a monster, but you like it. If your favourite horror novel is Anything by Grady Hendrix, you appreciate a man who can write a good female protagonist. That's cool, that's kind of sexy. But you're also obsessed with nostalgia, and the only way you can try anything new is if it harkens back to tropes and themes and ideas that you're familiar with. Get a life. If your favourite horror novel is Brainworms or Tell Me I'm Worthless by Alison Rumfitt, you're a traumatised and neurodiverse British trans woman who spends so much of her time obsessing over UK politics and the transphobia that has infected our social and political structures. You are angry all the time. You wake up angry, you go to sleep angry. You have an addiction to horror fiction, especially haunted house stories. Your obsession with horror fiction is matched only by your obsession with British politics, and you fear for the future of our country. You love being transgender, you feel whole, you feel complete, you feel good in your own skin for the first time, but at what cost? Our country is going to the dogs. You worry about it all the time. You're scared, you feel nauseous, and horror makes you feel comforted. Oh God. If your favourite horror novel is The Twisted Ones or anything else by T. Kingfisher, you like to take the idea of nostalgia and just If your favourite horror book is Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke or anything else by Eric LaRocca, you're very gay, you're very traumatised, and my number is 0790. If your favourite horror novel is The Silent Companions or really anything by Laura Purcell, Shirley Jackson was just a bit too clever for you. If your favourite horror story is At the Mountains of Madness or anything else by H.P. Lovecraft, you are constantly haunted by existential dread every waking minute of every single day. And you're also desperately paranoid that one day someone's gonna ask if you're a big fat racist. If your favourite horror story is The Telltale Heart, The Fall of the House of Usher, or anything else by Edgar Allan Poe, I promise you have so much to live for. There are so many people out there who love you. Do not give up. If your favourite horror novel is The Woman in Black by Susan Hill, people come up to you all the time and tell you that the play is better, and they're right. If your favourite horror novel is The Reformatory by Tananarive Due, you're one of those woke and clever horror fans who thinks that horror has to be political and about things and people, and you know how to think and care about people and be introspective and stuff. I hate you. If your favourite horror novel is Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle, you are gay, you are fun, and my number is 0790. Real talk, if your favourite horror novel is Maggie's Grave or anything by David Sodergren, you appreciate independent and self-publishing. You know how homogenized traditional publishing can get, and you seek your fun and your thrills elsewhere. You do a bit of digging and it's worth your while. Well done. If your favourite horror novel is The Cabin at the End of the World or anything else by Paul Tremblay, you think that Stephen King is like really played out. He is done, he is old, but you also want more Stephen King, and all you need in your life is Stephen King, and you wish that Stephen King was still good and interesting and new. Where can you get more Stephen King that isn't Stephen King but still feels like Stephen King? You just want some Stephen King in your life. Is that so hard? If your favourite horror novel is Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White, you are a sad little trans kid who needs to know that things are going to be okay, and I promise they will. They have to be. If your favorite horror novel is Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi, babe, you are fucked up and same. If your favorite horror novel is Brother by Anya Alborn, you like it when stories are flipped, when they turn on their head, when someone does something new and fresh with a familiar trope or idea because it makes you feel so clever. You're not clever. If your favorite horror story is by Mariana Enriquez, I have no joke to tell. You are creative, you seek out new and interesting and dark and gritty things, and I like you. If your favorite horror novel is Manhunt by Gretchen Felker Martin, I am legitimately terrified of you, but I also think you're really hot and sexy. I don't want to be with you, I don't want to go near you, but I also can't resist you, and my number is 079. If you enjoyed this, support me on Patreon, please, and subscribe for books.